The moment everyone thought the battle had ended, Karoline Leavitt made a move that no one saw coming. But this time, it wasn't just about her. After her first lawsuit sent shockwaves through The View, exposing behind-the-scenes chaos and igniting a firestorm of backlash, many believed she had already made her point. No one expected her to return with even more force. But that's exactly what just happened. Breaking news: Karoline Leavitt has just filed a second lawsuit against The View, and this time, the stakes are even higher. Karoline's first lawsuit shattered the carefully crafted image of The View. For years, the show thrived on heated debates, controversy, and outspoken hosts, but behind the scenes, a darker reality was emerging. Her lawsuit exposed damning allegations that shook the foundation of ABC's most polarizing talk show. Among the most shocking revelations were accusations of defamation, with The View's hosts making false and damaging claims about her. There were also allegations of media bias and censorship, with claims that ABC had actively worked behind the scenes to silence conservative voices. Leaked internal emails suggested a coordinated effort by ABC executives to destroy Karoline's reputation through a calculated smear campaign. The fallout was swift and severe. ABC executives scrambled for damage control. The View's hosts tried to downplay the scandal on air, but behind closed doors, panic spread like wildfire. The backlash wasn't just limited to public outrage. It struck at the network's financial core. Sponsors began pulling their ads. Ratings took a sharp decline, and for the first time, ABC realized the controversy might not just be a temporary storm, but a lasting crisis. Executives believed they could contain the fallout, ride out the storm, and eventually move on. But just as things seemed to be settling, Karoline struck again. This second lawsuit isn't just a repeat of the first. This time, she isn't just seeking damages, she is demanding accountability. Insiders reveal that she has assembled an even stronger legal team, one determined to expose what they believe is a long-standing pattern of manipulation, deceit, and abuse of power within ABC. Reports indicate that Karoline's team has uncovered new evidence so damaging that it could shake not just The View, but the entire network. Among the most alarming findings are leaked internal communications, allegedly proving that ABC systematically controlled narratives, burying negative press, while artificially boosting favorable coverage. There are documents that claim to reveal how The View engaged in direct censorship tactics to silence critics, ensuring that dissenting voices never gained traction. Even more shocking are testimonies from former ABC employees, insiders who claim they were pressured to cover up damaging stories to protect the show and its hosts. If these claims hold up in court, this won't just be another controversy. It could mark the end of The View as the public knows it. ABC executives are in full crisis mode. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and the rest of the panel thought they had weathered the storm, that their damage control efforts had worked, that this controversy would slowly fade away. They were wrong. Karoline isn't backing down, and this lawsuit isn't just about winning in court. She's exposing something far bigger. What exactly does this new lawsuit accuse ABC of? What new evidence has Karoline uncovered? And could this finally be the moment that brings The View to its breaking point? This legal battle is far from over. When Karoline Leavitt filed her first lawsuit against The View, it wasn't just another legal battle. It was a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the network. For years, The View had built a reputation as one of the most controversial talk shows on television, thriving on heated debates and strong personalities. But behind the scenes, there was a different story, one that ABC never wanted the public to see. Karoline's lawsuit didn't just challenge The View's narrative. It exposed the cracks within the show's foundation, revealing a culture of manipulation, censorship, and behind-the-scenes chaos. At first, ABC executives underestimated the impact of the lawsuit. They assumed it would blow over, just another controversy in the never-ending cycle of media scandals. But they were wrong. The allegations Karoline brought forward were serious. Claims of defamation, media bias, and a coordinated effort to silence voices that didn't align with The View's agenda. The legal documents pointed to internal communications suggesting that ABC had knowingly allowed false narratives to be pushed on air while suppressing opposing viewpoints. The public reaction was immediate. Viewers who had once seen The View as an open platform for discussion began questioning whether the show had been manipulating narratives all along. Social media erupted with debates, and news outlets across the political spectrum picked up the story. Conservative media seized on the lawsuit as proof of mainstream media bias, while even neutral observers couldn't ignore the growing scandal. ABC executives knew they had a crisis on their hands. Behind closed doors, the network launched an aggressive damage control strategy. Crisis meetings were held late into the night, with top executives, legal teams, and public relations specialists scrambling to contain the fallout. The first order of business was to control the messaging. They instructed the View's host to downplay the lawsuit, dismiss it as a political stunt, and avoid discussing any specifics on air. But the problem ran deeper than just public perception. Inside ABC, tensions were boiling over. Leaked reports from insiders revealed growing frustration among executives, producers, and even some hosts. The legal battle had opened old wounds within the network, with staff members divided over how to handle the controversy. Some executives pushed for an aggressive legal response, aiming to discredit Karoline and shut down the lawsuit quickly. Others warned that engaging in a legal battle would only make the situation worse. Meanwhile, the hosts of The View found themselves caught in the middle of the storm. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin were reportedly furious that the network hadn't handled the situation sooner. Behind the scenes, tempers flared. Heated arguments erupted during production meetings, with some hosts blaming the legal team for not preventing the lawsuit in the first place. ABC's next move was to silence Karoline, hoping that the lawsuit would lose momentum. According to inside sources, they attempted to negotiate a private settlement, an offer that would have required Karoline to drop the case in exchange for a financial payout and a non-disclosure agreement. But Karoline refused. She wasn't in this for the money. She wanted accountability. With their legal tactics failing, ABC allegedly turned to other methods. Reports surfaced that network executives had reached out to media allies, attempting to suppress coverage of the lawsuit. Some major media outlets downplayed the controversy, while others ignored it altogether. But in the age of the internet, burying a story is nearly impossible. Independent journalists, conservative commentators, and social media influencers picked up where mainstream media left off, amplifying the lawsuit and ensuring it stayed in the public eye. Despite ABC's efforts, the backlash only intensified. Sponsors began reconsidering their relationships with the network. Some brands quietly paused their advertising campaigns, waiting to see how the situation unfolded. Others publicly distanced themselves from The View, unwilling to be associated with the growing controversy. For ABC, the situation had gone from bad to worse. The View, once a major moneymaker for the network, was now becoming a liability. The lawsuit wasn't just affecting ratings. It was damaging ABC's reputation as a whole. Network executives were now facing pressure from higher-ups and shareholders who were beginning to question whether The View was still worth the trouble. Behind the scenes, some executives began floating an idea that had once been unthinkable. What if The View needed to be restructured? There was growing concern that certain hosts had become too controversial, that their actions were putting the entire show at risk. Names were mentioned, strategies were debated, but no one wanted to make the first move. Despite the internal chaos, Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar remained defiant. They dismissed the backlash as politically motivated, insisting that The View was simply being targeted because it spoke the truth. But as the weeks passed, it became clear that this controversy wasn't going away. ABC executives believed they had done enough to contain the fallout. They had controlled the messaging, attempted to silence Karoline, and worked behind the scenes to protect the show. But Karoline had other plans. She wasn't finished. The lawsuit had put ABC on the defensive, but now she was ready to go on the attack. What ABC executives didn't know was that Karoline and her legal team had uncovered even more damaging evidence. Evidence that would expose not just The View, but an entire system of media manipulation. And then, just when ABC thought it was safe, Karoline filed her second lawsuit. The first lawsuit had shaken the network, but this one could destroy it. The moment the news broke, it sent shockwaves through the media world. Karoline Leavitt had just filed a second lawsuit against The View, and this time, it wasn't just about defamation. The accusations were more explosive than before, and the potential consequences could devastate the network. ABC executives were already struggling to recover from the damage caused by the first lawsuit, which had exposed behind-the-scenes chaos and growing tensions between the show's hosts and producers. But this new legal action was different. It introduced far more serious allegations, claims that could not only destroy The View's reputation, but also put ABC itself at risk of financial ruin. The lawsuit accuses The View of fostering a toxic and hostile work culture, where opposing voices were systematically targeted, discredited, and even blacklisted. But the most damning accusation comes from Karoline's legal team, which claims to have uncovered undeniable proof that ABC engaged in deliberate media manipulation. According to the lawsuit, The View didn't just silence Karoline. They allegedly used artificial intelligence to control public perception, suppressing critical voices and boosting favorable coverage of the show. Leaked internal communications allegedly reveal that ABC worked directly with third-party tech firms to manipulate search algorithms and social media platforms. The lawsuit states that negative press about The View was deliberately buried, making it harder for viewers to find critical articles, while positive coverage was artificially amplified to shape public opinion in the network's favor. Even more alarming, there are claims that social media platforms were pressured to flag content that criticized the show, ensuring that dissenting voices were either shadow banned or removed entirely. If these allegations are proven true, it would mean that ABC executives not only allowed this practice, but actively participated in a deliberate strategy to control narratives and silence opposition. Legal analysts are calling it one of the most aggressive accusations of media censorship in recent history, and the implications go far beyond Karoline's personal case. This lawsuit has the potential to expose a system of media influence and manipulation that could shake public trust in mainstream news. For The View, this is nothing short of a nightmare. This isn't just a lawsuit. It's a direct attack on everything the show has built its reputation on. Karoline is no longer just fighting for her name. She's challenging the very integrity of the network itself. ABC's legal team is scrambling to put together a defense, but inside sources reveal that panic has already set in. Executives are terrified that more damaging evidence could surface, especially as rumors circulate that additional whistleblowers may be preparing to come forward. The financial impact could be catastrophic. Major advertisers are reportedly reconsidering their partnerships with the network, and the possibility of a full-scale sponsor pullout is looming. If that happens, The View could face an immediate crisis, one that may force ABC to make an impossible decision: either fire key hosts to save the show or cancel it altogether. Behind the scenes, tensions among The View's hosts are reaching a breaking point. Whoopi Goldberg is reportedly furious that ABC didn't shut this down sooner, blaming executives and legal advisors for underestimating Karoline's determination. Joy Behar, who initially dismissed the lawsuit as a publicity stunt, is now feeling the pressure as sponsors begin pulling back. Sunny Hostin, sensing the growing scandal, is rumored to be distancing herself from the show's leadership, refusing to comment on the ongoing legal battle. But the biggest concern for ABC isn't just the lawsuit itself, it's what might come next. The lawsuit has already forced internal documents into the spotlight, but if the case goes to trial, the network may be required to release even more confidential records. Legal experts believe that a court battle could expose deeper corruption within the network, unraveling years of carefully controlled narratives and public image management. As the legal battle intensifies, ABC is running out of options. If they choose to fight, they risk losing in court and facing even more exposure. If they attempt to settle, it will only confirm suspicions that Karoline has the evidence to take them down. Either way, the damage is already done. The View is no longer just facing another controversy. It's facing a crisis that could bring the entire show crashing down. The moment Karoline Leavitt's second lawsuit was announced, chaos erupted behind the scenes at The View. ABC executives were already in full-blown crisis mode, but inside the studio, panic was turning into rage. The hosts, who had once laughed off the first lawsuit as nothing more than a political stunt, were now realizing the gravity of the situation. This time, they weren't just dealing with legal trouble. They were facing a scandal that could bring down the entire show. Whoopi Goldberg was the first to hear the news. A producer rushed into her dressing room moments before she was set to go on air, whispering the details of Karoline's new lawsuit. She froze, phone in hand, staring in disbelief. Then, with a sudden outburst, she slammed her phone onto the counter and shouted, "How did this happen again?" Storming out of her dressing room, Whoopi demanded answers from the production team. She wanted to know why no one had warned her that this was coming. Her voice echoed through the halls as she berated the show's legal advisors, accusing them of failing to shut down Karoline's case before it could escalate. Whoopi had weathered scandals before, but this was different. This time, there was no easy way out, and she knew it. Meanwhile, Joy Behar was having a breakdown of her own. At first, she brushed off the lawsuit, assuming ABC would handle it like they always did. But then, an executive pulled her aside and delivered news that made her blood run cold. Several major sponsors were pulling their ads. The financial fallout had already begun. Joy's face turned pale as she scrolled through her phone, watching as more brands quietly distanced themselves from the show. She turned to the producers, voice shaking with frustration. "We're losing money because of this." Over her, she paced the set, muttering under her breath, her usual sarcastic confidence gone. For the first time, she looked genuinely scared. Behind closed doors, the show's production team was in a full-scale meltdown. Executives were scrambling to draft statements, trying to control the damage before it got worse. But there was no way to contain the disaster. Every second, new headlines were surfacing, social media was on fire, and the lawsuit was dominating the news cycle. Inside the studio, the tension between the hosts was reaching a breaking point. Heated arguments broke out during the pre-show meeting. Sunny Hostin, a former prosecutor, warned that the lawsuit was serious and couldn't just be dismissed as a publicity stunt. Alyssa Farah Griffin, the most moderate of the panel, remained quiet, avoiding eye contact as Whoopi and Joy ranted about Karoline's supposed vendetta. Then came the real bombshell. One of their own may have been feeding information to Karoline. An anonymous leak had surfaced online, revealing internal discussions about the lawsuit before it was even filed. Someone with access to confidential conversations had been communicating with Karoline's legal team. The news hit the Views set like an explosion. Whoopi's anger turned to suspicion. She looked around the room, her eyes scanning each face. "Someone in this room is talking," she muttered, "and they're going to regret it." Joy Behar, still visibly shaken, was the first to ask what everyone was thinking. "Who the hell is it?" All eyes turned to Alyssa Farah Griffin. The former Trump administration staffer had never been fully embraced by her co-hosts, and now, the tension between them was palpable. Rumors had already been circulating that Alyssa had privately expressed concerns about how the show treated conservative guests. Now, her silence was making her an easy target. Alyssa crossed her arms, shaking her head. "I have nothing to do with this," she said firmly. "But maybe instead of blaming each other, we should be asking why this lawsuit is happening in the first place." The room went silent. No one wanted to hear that. Whoopi exhaled sharply, running a hand over her face. "This is a setup," she muttered. "She wants us to turn on each other." But deep down, she knew the damage was already done. The show wasn't just dealing with a lawsuit, it was falling apart from the inside. As the cameras rolled, the audience had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. On the surface, the hosts carried on as usual, discussing politics, pop culture, and trending news. But underneath their carefully maintained composure, the cracks were widening. Joy struggled to keep her usual energy, distracted by the constant buzz of her phone with updates from ABC's legal team. Whoopi's frustration was barely concealed as she forced a smile through gritted teeth. Alyssa, feeling the weight of suspicion, barely spoke during the entire episode. But the worst was yet to come. Backstage, producers were already bracing for more fallout. Rumors were swirling that more insiders were preparing to speak out. ABC executives were debating drastic measures. Should they take one of the hosts off the air to contain the controversy? Was it time to consider canceling the show altogether? For the first time, The View's biggest stars were realizing they might not be untouchable after all. The lawsuits, the leaks, the infighting, it was all spiraling out of control. And Karoline Leavitt wasn't done yet. The moment the leaked emails surfaced, everything changed. What had started as a lawsuit against The View had now turned into something far more dangerous for ABC. This was no longer just a legal battle about defamation or harassment. It was about control over information, public perception, and the very way narratives were shaped in the digital world. And now, thanks to these leaks, the world was seeing just how deep the manipulation went. Behind closed doors, ABC had allegedly been running a massive media censorship operation for years, using artificial intelligence to shape public opinion and silence critics. According to the leaked emails, network executives worked closely with tech firms to manipulate search engine rankings, social media trends, and online discussions to ensure that negative coverage of The View never gained traction. The evidence suggested that what the public saw online was not an organic reflection of reality, but a carefully crafted illusion. As soon as the documents became public, tech experts began analyzing them, and the results were shocking. The files pointed to an AI-powered moderation system designed specifically to protect The View. Certain keywords and topics were flagged, preventing them from gaining traction in trending lists or recommendation algorithms. Negative articles about the show were pushed down in search results, making them harder to find. Meanwhile, stories that portrayed The View in a positive light were given artificial engagement boosts, ensuring they stayed at the top of news feeds. One of the most damning revelations was that specific conservative commentators, including Karoline Leavitt herself, had been shadow banned on major social media platforms. Internal ABC communications allegedly described Karoline as a high-risk disruptor and flagged her content for suppression. Any posts criticizing The View were systematically buried, and in some cases, accounts posting them saw sudden drops in reach and engagement. The leaked emails also suggested that ABC had direct lines of communication with social media companies, allowing them to influence moderation policies behind the scenes. Some messages even discussed working with third-party tech firms to automate the process, making it almost impossible for users to detect that they were being censored. This wasn't just reputation management. This was an organized effort to control what the public saw and heard. As the leaks spread across the internet, outrage exploded. People who had suspected media bias for years now had proof that a major network had been deliberately shaping the digital landscape. Social media users began testing the system themselves, posting criticism of The View and tracking engagement. Many reported that their posts quickly vanished from trending sections, reinforcing suspicions that the censorship was still happening in real time. Karoline Leavitt wasted no time responding. Her legal team announced that these leaks would be submitted as evidence in her lawsuit, proving that The View's influence extended far beyond the television screen. This case was no longer just about her reputation. It was about exposing how the media manipulates reality. But just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get worse for ABC, a hacker group entered the picture. A group calling themselves Ghost Signal released a cryptic message online, claiming they had access to even more confidential ABC files. Their statement was short but chilling. They silenced voices. They rigged narratives. They thought no one would notice. We did. Attached to their message was a blurred screenshot of what appeared to be an internal ABC dashboard used to monitor public sentiment. If real, it meant the network had a real-time, AI-driven system tracking online discussions and actively suppressing negative sentiment. Within minutes, the internet erupted. Was this proof that ABC was directly manipulating public opinion on a mass scale? And if they were doing it, how many other media companies were using similar systems? Inside ABC, panic reached new heights. Executives rushed to identify the source of the leaks, while legal teams scrambled to contain the damage. According to inside reports, security teams were tasked with locking down all internal servers and emails, fearing that even more sensitive data could be released. The legal department was in crisis mode, drafting emergency response plans and preparing for potential lawsuits beyond Karoline's. Producers at The View were just as blindsided. They had already been struggling to deal with Karoline's first lawsuit, and now they were being dragged into an even bigger scandal. Some staff members allegedly started deleting emails and files, terrified that their own communications might be exposed. Others quietly began considering whether it was time to leave the show before things got even worse. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar were livid. For years, they had dominated conversations, shutting down conservative voices and steering discussions in whatever direction they wanted. Now, they were the ones being exposed. During a tense production meeting, Whoopi reportedly slammed her fists on the table, demanding to know who had let this happen. She blamed ABC's tech team for not securing internal systems, ABC's legal team for not shutting Karoline down sooner, and even the producers for not keeping her informed. Joy Behar, on the other hand, was in full-blown panic mode. She had seen what happens when advertisers start pulling out, and she knew that if sponsors abandoned The View over this, ABC might cancel the show altogether. She spent the morning frantically calling contacts within the network, trying to figure out how bad the situation really was. The answer she got wasn't reassuring. The truth was, ABC had no control over what was coming next. The hacker group, Go Signal, had promised more leaks, and insiders were warning that the worst was still ahead. If those files revealed deeper corruption, especially involving executives, ABC wouldn't just be facing public scrutiny. They would be facing federal investigations. Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit had started as a personal battle for justice, but now it had become something far bigger. It was no longer just about one lawsuit, or even about The View. It was about how much power the media truly has, and how far they will go to protect it. ABC was no longer fighting Karoline in court. They were fighting a battle for their survival. The moment the second lawsuit hit the headlines, ABC executives knew they were in deep trouble. The fallout from Karoline Leavitt's legal battle had already put the network in crisis mode, but this latest escalation was something they hadn't prepared for. Damage control strategies had failed, and now, the very foundation of ABC's credibility was under attack. Inside the network's headquarters, emergency meetings were held behind closed doors. Top-level executives, legal teams, and crisis management specialists gathered in a war room setting, desperately trying to figure out how to contain the situation before it spiraled completely out of control. Every phone in the building was ringing, emails were flooding in, and the pressure to respond was mounting by the second. At the center of the panic was the growing financial threat. ABC's biggest sponsors, major corporations that had poured millions into advertising on The View, were furious. They had already been uneasy after the first lawsuit, but the second one, combined with the AI censorship scandal and leaked documents, made them question whether associating with the network was a liability. One by one, sponsors began threatening to withdraw their funding. Behind closed doors, a top executive at one of ABC's largest advertisers delivered an ultimatum: "Fix this, or we're done." That one statement set off a chain reaction that had executives scrambling to find a way to stop the bleeding. The financial risk wasn't just about short-term losses. If more sponsors pulled out, ABC could lose tens of millions of dollars in ad revenue. The View had always been a controversial show, but it had also been a money-making machine. Now, for the first time, it was becoming a financial liability. With revenue on the line, executives were forced to consider drastic measures. Some suggested offering Karoline a private settlement, but that option was quickly dismissed. Karoline had already made it clear she wasn't backing down for money. She wanted justice, accountability, and public exposure. That left only one other option: making internal changes to The View itself. A heated debate erupted among ABC's top brass. Should they fire Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar to save the show? The idea was almost unthinkable. Whoopi and Joy had been the face of The View for years, and while their controversial statements had often stirred backlash, their influence was undeniable. But now, the backlash wasn't just about their opinions. It was about a lawsuit that accused the network of corruption, censorship, and media manipulation. And with leaked documents proving that ABC knew about the unethical practices happening behind the scenes, executives were being forced into a corner. The leaked documents were perhaps the most damaging development of all. While ABC had publicly denied wrongdoing, internal emails and memos told a very different story. These leaked files confirmed that executives had long been aware of the censorship tactics being used to protect The View. Some even suggested that high-ranking officials approved the use of AI-driven suppression tools to silence negative press and push favorable narratives. The leaks exposed conversations between network leaders discussing ways to downplay the first lawsuit and prevent further legal fallout. One memo, written just weeks before the second lawsuit was filed, warned, "If this gets out, we're finished." Now, it had gotten out, and ABC was indeed on the brink of collapse. As news of the leaks spread, public trust in the network plummeted. The lawsuit wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was proof of everything critics had been saying for years. The View wasn't just pushing its own agenda. It was allegedly controlling the media narrative through deliberate suppression of opposing voices. Inside ABC's executive meetings, tensions reached their breaking point. Some leaders argued that keeping Whoopi and Joy on air was too dangerous. Others insisted that firing them would only confirm Karoline's accusations. If they removed the hosts now, it would look like an admission of guilt. Whoopi Goldberg, aware of the rumors circulating, wasn't taking it well. Furious at the suggestion that she might be sacrificed to save the network, she reportedly lashed out at executives, warning them that turning on her would be the biggest mistake they ever made. Joy Behar, on the other hand, was less confrontational, but equally panicked. She had already watched one sponsor after another pull out, and she understood what that meant. If The View was no longer profitable, ABC would have no reason to keep it on the air. Despite their resistance, the pressure on ABC was mounting. Executives knew they had to make a decision soon, or risk having the network's entire future determined by Karoline's lawsuit. For the first time, the possibility of canceling The View was being discussed as a serious option. The lawsuits had started as a battle between Karoline and The View, but now they had turned into an all-out war that threatened to bring down an entire media empire. ABC was no longer just fighting for its reputation. It was fighting for survival. The moment the lawsuit and leaked documents hit the public, the internet erupted. Within hours, social media was flooded with outrage, speculation, and an overwhelming sense of vindication from those who had long suspected media manipulation. The hashtag The View Exposed quickly climbed the trending charts, dominating discussions across platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. What had started as a legal battle between Karoline Leavitt and The View had now turned into a full-scale public reckoning, one that ABC could no longer control. At first, The View's most loyal supporters tried to defend the show, dismissing the lawsuit as another politically motivated attack. But as more leaked documents surfaced, public opinion began to shift. Even longtime viewers, who had once defended Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar through past controversies, found themselves questioning whether they had been misled all along. Memes flooded the internet, turning the crisis into a viral spectacle. One particularly popular image showed Whoopi and Joy with blank expressions, overlaid with the words, "When you realize your AI bots can't save you this time." Another depicted Joy Behar laughing with the caption, "Joy before sponsors started pulling ads. Joy after." A video edit of Whoopi storming off set during a past debate was repurposed with fake subtitles reading, "I can't deal with this lawsuit anymore." Beyond the jokes and memes, serious discussions are taking place. Independent journalists and media watchdogs began analyzing the leaked emails, breaking down how ABC allegedly manipulated narratives and censored critical voices. Tech analysts provided proof of algorithmic suppression, showing how certain stories have been deliberately buried to protect The View. As the controversy continued to gain traction, major advertisers started taking action. Brands that had long partnered with The View began quietly distancing themselves from the show. Some companies paused their ad campaigns, waiting to see how the situation played out. Others outright pulled their sponsorships, not wanting to be associated with a media scandal that was spiraling out of control. For ABC, the financial consequences were devastating. Advertising revenue had already taken a hit after Karoline's first lawsuit, but now, multiple corporate sponsors were reconsidering their contracts. The fear wasn't just about short-term losses. It was about whether The View could remain a viable brand if it was now widely seen as corrupt and dishonest. Executives scrambled to contain the damage, instructing The View's team to avoid mentioning the lawsuit on air. But silence only made things worse. Viewers noticed the lack of response, fueling speculation that ABC had something to hide. The backlash reached a breaking point when a former staff member from ABC came forward, claiming that discussions about media manipulation had been happening behind closed doors for years. In an anonymous interview, the insider revealed that some employees had raised concerns about how ABC controlled narratives, but were ignored or even threatened. The revelation sent shockwaves through the media industry. The lawsuit was no longer just about Karoline. It had become a conversation about media ethics, censorship, and corporate accountability. As public pressure mounted, ABC faced a no-win situation. If they admitted to wrongdoing, they would lose all credibility. If they continued to deny the allegations, The leaked evidence and growing public distrust would only make things worse. For the first time, ABC was losing control of the narrative. And the worst part, they had no idea how to stop it. The breaking point came when one of ABC's largest sponsors officially cut ties with the network. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. What had once been a growing controversy was now turning into a financial disaster. ABC had faced backlash before. The View had been at the center of scandals, heated debates, and public outrage, but the show had always managed to survive. This time, however, the damage was different. The leaked emails, the AI censorship accusations, and Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit had exposed something far bigger than just a single controversy. The public had lost trust, and once trust was gone, sponsors weren't willing to take the risk. Within hours of the first sponsor's announcement, more followed. Brands that had spent millions on advertising during the View's primetime slots were now backing out. Contracts were being reviewed, deals were being paused, and some advertisers were demanding guarantees that ABC could no longer provide. The loss of sponsorship revenue hit ABC hard. Executives had been hoping to contain the crisis, but now it was clear the situation was out of control. The financial markets reacted immediately. ABC's parent company saw its stock price begin to slide as investors panicked over the growing scandal. The lawsuit had already raised serious legal concerns, but now, with the loss of advertisers, investors were questioning the long-term stability of the network. Analysts began openly speculating about the future of The View. For years, the show had been a ratings giant, drawing in a loyal audience and securing high-profile advertisers. But in just a matter of weeks, the narrative had flipped. Now, The View was becoming a financial liability. Network insiders, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that ABC was actively discussing whether The View could survive this scandal. Some executives believed that major changes needed to happen, possibly even removing Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar to repair the show's image. Others, however, were beginning to believe that canceling the show entirely might be the only way to protect the network from further fallout. Behind the scenes, ABC's leadership was scrambling. Meetings were being held late into the night. Crisis management teams were desperately trying to spin the situation, and legal advisors were warning that if the lawsuit went to trial, the network could be forced to reveal even more damaging information. For the first time in its history, The View wasn't just in trouble. It was on the verge of collapse. As more sponsors pulled their funding and stock prices continued to fall, the question wasn't just about the show's survival anymore. It was about whether ABC itself could withstand the storm. And with Karoline Leavitt refusing to back down, it was clear the worst was still yet to come. With The View spiraling out of control, Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar decided it was time to fight back. The lawsuits, the leaked documents, the sponsor exodus, everything was stacking against them. Their only hope was to regain control of the narrative before it was too late. ABC's PR team worked overtime, drafting a carefully worded statement for the hosts. The plan was simple: go on air, downplay the scandal, dismiss the accusations, and reassure the audience that The View wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, Whoopi and Joy opened the show with a rehearsed speech. Whoopi, her voice measured and serious, stared into the camera and said, "We just want to take a moment to address the misinformation being spread about this show. Let's be clear, we have never censored voices, we have never engaged in any kind of manipulation, and we have nothing to hide." Joy nodded in agreement, chiming in with a sarcastic laugh. "Honestly, this is just another attempt to silence us. They can't handle strong women speaking the truth, so they make up these ridiculous stories. It's pathetic." The studio audience clapped, but something felt off. The segment was meant to be damage control, but instead, it only added fuel to the fire. Social media exploded within minutes. Clips of Whoopi and Joy's statements went viral, but not in the way ABC had hoped. Instead of reassuring viewers, the hosts had made things worse. People started pulling up receipts, past clips of Whoopi cutting off conservative guests, Joy shutting down discussions, and ABC executives blatantly avoiding transparency. The internet picked apart every word of their statement, pointing out the contradictions and lies. One particularly damning clip resurfaced, an old episode where Whoopi walked off the set in anger when a guest challenged her. Memes flooded social media, with captions like, "We don't censor people," followed by Whoopi storming off. Another clip showed Joy telling a conservative panelist, "We don't want to hear it," directly contradicting her new claim that The View was a place for open discussion. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Viewers who had once supported the show started questioning everything. The more Whoopi and Joy tried to dismiss the controversy, the more obvious it became that they were out of touch with reality. And then, the live segment disaster happened. As part of their damage control plan, ABC arranged for a few carefully selected audience questions to give Whoopi and Joy a chance to address concerns. But things didn't go as planned. One audience member, clearly frustrated, stood up and asked, "If you've never silenced anyone, why do so many people say otherwise?" Whoopi froze. She wasn't expecting an actual challenge. She tried to brush it off with a joke, but the tension in the room was undeniable. The audience, which usually clapped on cue, was silent. Another question followed. "If you have nothing to hide, why won't ABC release the internal documents proving your innocence?" This time, Joy lost her composure. She waved her hand dismissively and snapped, "Oh, please. We're not going to entertain conspiracy theories." The audience reacted instantly. Some gasped, others booed. It was a disaster. Instead of regaining control, Whoopi and Joy had completely lost the room. By the end of the episode, the damage was done. Viewership numbers plummeted to record lows. Even ABC executives, who had been desperate to salvage the show, were now questioning whether keeping Whoopi and Joy on air was worth it. Instead of silencing the controversy, The View's last-ditch effort had backfired spectacularly. The public had made up its mind, and for the first time, Whoopi and Joy realized that the battle was no longer in their hands. Just when ABC thought the storm couldn't get any worse, Karoline Leavitt delivered the final blow. Standing before reporters, her legal team by her side, she issued a bold challenge, one that sent shockwaves through the media industry. "If ABC and The View truly have nothing to hide," she said, staring directly into the cameras, "then I have one simple request. Release every internal email related to this case. Let the public see exactly how this network operates behind closed doors." The statement landed like a bomb. For weeks, ABC had been dodging questions, refusing to comment on the lawsuit specifics while trying to keep the scandal from spreading further. But now, Karoline had backed them into a corner. If ABC agreed to release the emails, they risked exposing the full extent of their manipulation, censorship, and behind-the-scenes corruption. If they refused, they would only confirm what Karoline had been saying all along, that they were guilty and had something to hide. ABC's response was immediate hesitation. Executives scrambled to hold emergency meetings, weighing the risks of compliance. Legal advisors warned that releasing the emails could destroy more than just The View. It could expose how the network controlled narratives beyond the show, how they handled other political controversies, and how deeply their influence reached into media and tech partnerships. As ABC stalled, the pressure mounted. Journalists, legal experts, and media watchdogs demanded answers. Public opinion continued to turn against the network, with even some mainstream outlets calling for transparency. Then, just when ABC thought they might be able to contain the situation, a whistleblower emerged. An anonymous former ABC executive stepped forward, confirming everything Karoline had been saying. In an exclusive interview, the whistleblower revealed that the network had been actively suppressing certain voices, manipulating media algorithms, and working behind the scenes to control narratives. According to the source, internal discussions about silencing critics, burying damaging stories, and artificially boosting positive coverage have been happening at the highest levels of the company. The whistleblower also claimed that ABC had considered settling with Karoline behind closed doors, fearing that if the lawsuit went to trial, too much internal information would be exposed. The revelation sent ABC into full-scale damage control mode. Executives were now desperately searching for an escape route, but it was too late. Karoline's challenge had changed the game. This wasn't just about The View anymore. This was about exposing corruption in the media itself. Legal experts began predicting that ABC could face not just lawsuits, but government scrutiny. If the allegations about AI censorship and narrative manipulation were proven, it could lead to federal investigations into media ethics, free speech violations, and corporate overreach. ABC had entered survival mode. For Karoline, This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had turned a personal battle into a national reckoning, forcing the media to answer for its actions. And as ABC continued to stall, public suspicion only grew. The message was clear. If ABC had nothing to hide, they would release the emails. But they weren't going to, because the truth was more dangerous than the lawsuit itself. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. ABC was no longer just facing a lawsuit. They were facing a full-scale reckoning. What had started as a single legal battle against The View had now expanded into multiple investigations, sponsor withdrawals, and growing public scrutiny. ABC's legal team was completely overwhelmed. Karoline Leavitt's second lawsuit had already put the network in a vulnerable position, but the leaked documents, AI censorship scandal, and whistleblower revelations had now opened the door for other lawsuits to follow. Experts predicted that more individuals could step forward with their own claims, turning this into a class action nightmare. Meanwhile, sponsors continued to pull out. Major brands that had once proudly advertised during The View were now backing away, unwilling to be associated with a scandal that was growing by the day. Ad revenue was plummeting, leaving the network financially unstable. Inside ABC, executives were panicking. The View, once a flagship program, was now a liability. Discussions about canceling the show altogether were happening behind closed doors. Some executives believed that removing Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar might save the brand, but others knew the damage was already too great. For the first time, ABC was considering the unthinkable, ending The View for good. On the other side of this battle, Karoline Leavitt had emerged victorious in the court of public opinion. No longer just a political commentator or former guest on the show, she had become a symbol of resistance against media corruption. She had exposed how networks manipulate narratives, how dissenting voices are silenced, and how powerful media giants use technology to control information. And the public was paying attention. Viewers who had once trusted mainstream media began questioning everything. Conversations about media bias, digital censorship, and corporate influence were happening everywhere, from online forums to major news outlets. Karoline had proven something that many had suspected for years. Mainstream media isn't untouchable anymore. So now, the question remains, is this the end of The View? Or is this just the beginning of something much bigger? What do you think? Should The View be canceled? Should ABC release the internal emails? Or is this just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to media corruption? Comment below with your thoughts and stay tuned, because this story is far from over.